Thank you for joining us this important webinar where we're going to talk about why procurement reform fails and what African institutions must do differently. I take this opportunity to serve you today as the host, and we would have the opportunity to set the scene for these important discussions. Across Africa, ladies and gentlemen, procurement reforms have expanded significantly. We have seen stronger laws being put in place, more oversight, and growing digital systems being implemented across different institutions. Yet, many institutions, they still struggle to convert reform into delivery. This is the issue we're discussing today. Our focus is simple. Why reform fail in practice and what African institutions must do differently if procurement is to deliver real value. Colleagues, public procurement is not a back office process. It is one of the main ways government turn public money into roads, medicines, schools, infrastructure, and services. And when procurement works, development moves. When procurement fails, project slows down, cost increases, supplier disengage, and citizens, they lose confidence. So, this conversation, colleagues, is not only about compliance. However, it is about whether institutions can actually deliver value. We have seen more reforms across the continent, as I've alluded, but often the same or similar outcomes. More laws, more control systems, more procedures, more circulars, more guidelines, more digital tools, and yet we're challenged with delays, cost overruns, supplier dissatisfactions, weak contract deliveries. Often you find that there's lack of adequate consequence management. So the problem is not simply the absence of reform. The deeper problem is that reform on paper often does not automatically become performance in practice. And we ask ourselves that where systems break, where have the system breaks in procurement? Procurement systems usually break in spaces between policy and execution. The legal framework may exist, the rules may be clear, the institutions may formally be in place, but delivery still fails when these elements are not aligned in practice. That gap between design and execution is where many reforms they lose impact. So the real issue, ladies and gentlemen, is not only whether the rules are correct. The real issue is whether institutions can execute them effectively. Colleagues, we're seeing recurrent failure drivers across the continent and beyond. And I've categorized this into three drivers where we have capability failures. Institutions often lack skilled professionals, implementation support, and procurement depth. Also, governance failure. We have accountability is often unclear, enforcement inconsistent, and incentive reward more than outcomes, and the system's failure. Processes are fragmented, digital systems are incomplete, and contract management is weak. So reform failed not only because of the technical gaps, but because capability, governance, and execution are misaligned. I have been able to look into some of the work that has been done by the World Bank in trying to give credence in terms of our presentation today and the webinar. Looking at the World Bank report where they talked about making procurement work better and evaluation of the World Bank, procurement systems. I've been able to look at the recent MAPS evaluations for Kenya, for South Africa, for Namibia, Tanzania, and these assessments were done between 2025. To be able to draw inferences on the current status of public procurement systems. And based on this assessment, we realized that Kenya, for example, they have framework which is broad. They experience complexity and incomplete reporting and skills gap, as well as late payment, which weakens procurement outcomes. In South Africa, we know very well that long ago, from 2001 to 2003, public procurement reform were undergone in South Africa, and in 2004, they introduced the supply chain management policy to be able to enhance procurement systems. I've been privileged and I work on the system a lot, but till date, we still find that we still have gaps. In fact, ISCA did contribute in sending out contributions to the first draft of the public procurement bill in 2019. And today, we still have the policy which is in place, and right now, a draft legislation is currently out for public comment. What does MAP says in South Africa? That we have the fragmented, policies that leads to uneven implementation, e-procurement system compliance. And we know even in 2017, the National Treasury itself released its own report and identify key gaps in public procurement implementations in the country. In Namibia, the report from MAPS indicates that we have low capacity and a low compliance mindset, which limits procurement effectiveness, resulting in staffing and underutilization of digital tools, which constrains performance. In Tanzania, we find that institutional process is visible, but we face delays, transparency weaknesses, and it limits the use of quality-based procurement, which constrains the result. So, ladies and gentlemen, across different systems, the pattern is similar. Reform exists, institutions still struggle to deliver. Now, what are we positioning in this conversation? We are positioning to the fact that there needs to be a shift in African institutional mindset. For many years, procurement reforms. Houston, can you mute yourself, please? For many years, procurement reform have focused mainly on compliance. I have seen in different institutions and different countries, they have instituted programs on procurement audit. In certain countries, we have the audit process drive practitioners towards compliance, and innovation is lost, and public value is lost. Compliance is necessary, but it's not enough. Institutions now need to go through 3 stages, which we are looking at, and our team, our speakers are going to talk on this, to expatiate on them. Compliance, capability, and public value. We need to ask ourselves that how matured is our institution in driving integrity and regulatory adherence? How mature is our systems in building capability through enhanced skills and support? How mature is our institutions in driving outcome and public benefit deliveries? Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the future of reform is not more rules on rules alone. It is building institutions that can turn rules into results.